In the summer of 2024, as a record-breaking heatwave swept across Europe, the lush green forests of the Pindus Mountains in Greece turned into an inferno. Thick black smoke covered the sky, and the cries for help from humans mixed with the agonized wails of wild animals in a symphony of life and death. In the small village of Agia Triada, Elena, a strong-willed goatherd, stood her ground alongside her loyal dog, Axios, and her herd of mountain goats, refusing to abandon what she loved. Deep in the forest, Milo, a battle-scarred old brown bear, led the wild creatures in a desperate escape from disaster's deadly grasp. Fate brought them together amid the choking smoke, where the boundary between human and animal blurred, giving way to an unexpected alliance. From hidden caves behind waterfalls to the struggle to revive the scorched land, this story is not just about surviving the fire. It is a testament to resilience, sacrifice, and hope, as ashes give way to new light. This is the fire beneath the forest shadow, where humans and nature together write an epic of survival. The summer of 2024 in Greece was harsher than any in the memory of the people of the Pindus Mountains. Temperatures soared to 45 degrees Celsius, and the air was so dry that every breath felt like inhaling embers. Elena Stavros, a 28-year-old woman with unruly black curls and calloused hands from farm work, lived in a small stone house nestled deep in the valley. She had inherited the tradition of goat herding from her grandfather, who once told her about the cool summers and sudden downpours, memories that now seemed like distant luxuries. Living with Elena was Axios, a shaggy dark brown shepherd dog whose sharp eyes missed nothing. Axios was more than just a companion. He was the guardian of her 30-strong herd of stubborn yet hardy goats, well adapted to the rugged mountain terrain. Elena's village, Agia Triada, was once a peaceful haven surrounded by endless pine forests. But weeks ago, a faint scent of smoke in the wind had made her uneasy. "It's probably just someone burning trash," she reassured herself. Yet Axios, lifting his head toward the forest, seemed to sense something different. Meanwhile, deep in the Pindus forest, Milo, the old brown bear with patches of silver in his fur, wandered along his familiar trails. He had once been the king of his forest, but a long scar on his left leg, a painful souvenir from a hunter's trap 5 years ago, had slowed him down. Now, he lived in solitude, avoiding humans, keeping company only with the whispering wind and rustling leaves. But that day, he smelled smoke, not from a small campfire, but something bigger, fiercer. On the afternoon of July 15th, a dry lightning strike, without rain, hit the western hillside, where the parched pines were ready to ignite. Within hours, flames spread rapidly, devouring hectares of forest. The crackling of burning wood merged with the panicked cries of birds and the pounding footsteps of animals fleeing for their lives. In Agia Triada, the church bells rang in alarm, and the local firefighting team, armed with only a few outdated trucks, was quickly overwhelmed. Elena was feeding her goats when she heard the loudspeaker from a patrol car. "Evacuate immediately! The fire is heading toward the village!" Villagers rushed to gather their belongings, but Elena stood frozen, staring at her goats. She couldn't leave them behind. "We'll go together," she whispered to Axios, tying a rope around the lead goat's neck and starting toward the eastern trail, hoping to escape the advancing fire. In the forest, Milo was also fleeing. The fire had cut off its familiar path down to the valley. Smoke burned its eyes, and the searing heat made every step agonizing. Along the way, it came across a herd of motherless deer, a wounded little fox, and a few panicked rabbits. Instinct took over. Though old and weary, Milo took the lead, using the last of its strength to carve a path through the underbrush, heading toward the stream at the edge of the forest, where it had once drunk peacefully on calmer days. On the narrow trail, Elena realized she had underestimated the fire's speed. The wind shifted, pushing thick smoke and burning embers toward her. The goats grew frantic, some darting into the bushes in fear. Axios barked furiously, trying to herd them back, but the choking smoke left them nearly blind. Suddenly, she heard a low growl, not the crackling of flames, but the sound of a large animal. Through the haze, Elena spotted Milo, its left leg trapped under a fallen pine tree. The bear panted heavily, its eyes flickering with despair. Her heart pounded. She had never faced a bear before, but she recognized the truth. It was running from the fire, just like her. Axios, stay calm, she commanded her growling dog. Pulling a small knife from her backpack, she quickly cut the rope into sections. With Axios holding one end taut, she wrapped the rope around the tree trunk and pulled with all her strength, freeing Milo. The bear staggered to its feet but did not attack. It gazed at Elena for a moment before turning and walking toward the large rock. Elena, though exhausted, chose to follow. She had no other choice with the fire closing in. Milo led her through a narrow passage, where a small waterfall cascaded down the rocky cliffside. Behind it lay a hidden cave, just wide enough for her, Axios, the goats, and even Milo to take shelter. Inside the cave, the air was cool, refreshed by the mist from the waterfall. Elena sat down, wrapping her arms around Axios as the goats bleated softly in relief. Milo lay in the far corner, panting, but its eyes no longer wild. Outside, the fire roared, consuming everything in its path. Elena reached into her backpack, took out a bottle of water, and poured some into her palm. She stretched her hand toward Milo, a small gesture of peace between human and beast. That night, as the fire still raged, an unexpected rain began to fall, something no one had dared to hope for in the middle of the drought. Droplets seeped through cracks in the rock, dripping onto the cave floor, carrying with them a fragile sense of hope. Elena whispered to Axios, "We're going to be okay." By morning, the rescue team found the cave, guided by the echoes of Axios barking through the waterfall. The rain had helped contain parts of the fire, but the once thriving forest was now nothing more than a wasteland of ashes. As Elena stepped out, leading her goats, Milo silently withdrew into the cave's shadows, vanishing back into the depths of the wilderness. Back in the village, Elena recounted her story, but few believed that a bear had helped her survive. Still, she never forgot Milo, the old beast who had shown her that, in the face of disaster, the line between human and animal could blur. Determined to restore the Pindus forest, not just for herself but for creatures like Milo, she joined the local forest protection team. Deep in the wilderness, Milo resumed its life. The old wound still ached, but for the first time in years, it felt something new. It was no longer completely alone. In the days after the fire, Agia Triada was heavily silent. Smoke still curled from the charred remains of the forest, and the scent of burnt wood lingered in every corner. Elena stood in front of her stone house. Miraculously, it had survived, though its roof was covered in ash. The goats were placed in a temporary pen, while Axios lay beside her, his eyes weary yet vigilant. Villagers began returning, bringing stories of loss. Homes reduced to rubble, fields turned to dust. A middle-aged man, Costas, the village elder and a close friend of Elena's grandfather, approached her. He placed a firm hand on her shoulder, his voice rough from smoke and sorrow. "You did well saving your goats. But now what? The forest is gone. How will we live?" Elena didn't answer immediately. She gazed toward the Pindus Mountains, where Milo had disappeared, and wondered if the old bear had found a new refuge. By noon, a national rescue team arrived, distributing water and emergency supplies. One of the volunteers, Nikos, the young man around 25, with bright eyes and an eager energy, approached Elena. "I heard you survived in a cave, with an entire herd of goats." "And a bear?" he asked, half intrigued, half skeptical. Elena nodded, summarizing her story, though her eyes softened when she mentioned Milo. Nikos chuckled. "You should join our team. We need people like you to help restore the forest." Elena hesitated. She had never considered leaving her goats behind for anything else. But the image of the scorched forest, and the way Milo had looked at her in the cave, unsettled her. "I'll think about it," she said. 3 days later, Elena made her decision. With Costas' approval, she joined Nikos' forest restoration team, bringing Axios along as her loyal companion. Their first mission was to assess the damage deep in the Pindus region, the area hardest hit by the fire. Nikos led a team of 5, including Elena, armed with surveying tools and cameras to document the forest's condition. The journey was harsher than Elena expected. Ash covered the ground, blackened tree trunks lay collapsed across the trails, and the air was eerily silent. No birdsong, no rustling leaves. Only the wind whistled through the skeletal remains of the trees. Axios walked ahead, his nose twitching as he sniffed the air, searching for any sign of surviving life. Suddenly, he stopped, ears perked. From the burnt underbrush, a young fawn stumbled out, its legs trembling, eyes wide with fear. Elena crouched, calling to gently, but the fawn bolted when Nikos accidentally dropped his flashlight. "There are still animals here," Elena murmured, her voice a mix of hope and concern. Nikos nodded. "But they need food and water. If we don't act, they won't survive." When they finally reached the stream where Milo had once led them, they discovered a devastating sight. The water had dried up, leaving behind cracked, parched earth. Elena's chest tightened. "Milo brought me here to survive, but what now?" she thought. Nikos scribbled notes in his journal. "Restoring the water source has to be our first priority." On their way back, Axios barked again. This time, Elena spotted a large paw print imprinted in the ash, a bear's track. She smiled. "He's still alive!" A week later, Elena faced a new challenge. At a village meeting, a group of townspeople, led by Janis, a wealthy but stubborn farmer, vehemently opposed the forest restoration method. "Restore the forest?" Janis scoffed, slamming his hand on a map of the burned region. "We need land to farm, not useless trees. The forest is dead. Let it stay dead." Elena stood up, her voice calm but firm. "Without the forest, the land will erode, the streams will dry up, and we'll have nothing left to farm. I've seen animals survive in it. They need the forest, and so do we." Janis scoffed. "You're young, Elena. Don't dream like your grandfather did. Your goats won't be enough to feed the whole village." The argument dragged on late into the night, but in the end Costas, as village elder, sided with Elena. "We'll give the young ones a chance," he said, glancing at Nikos and Elena. "But if they fail, Janis will have a reason to reclaim the land." The weight of responsibility pressed on Elena's shoulders, but she refused to back down. Meanwhile, deep in the forest, Milo faced his own struggle. With water and food scarce, the old bear grew weaker by the day. One afternoon, it stumbled upon a group of poachers, men who took advantage of the post-fire chaos to hunt the surviving wildlife. Milo hid in the underbrush, but the sound of gunshots nearby made its body tremble. It thought of Elena, the strange human who had once saved it, and for the first time, Milo felt a need to fight for its forest. Elena and Milo's paths crossed again unexpectedly. One morning, as Nikos' team dug a small trench to redirect water from the valley back to the stream, Axios suddenly bolted into the forest, barking furiously. Elena ran after him and found Milo, thinner than before, but still imposing, standing off against two poachers. One man raised his rifle, but before he could pull the trigger, Elena shouted, "Stop!" She rushed forward, whipping a long wooden staff, while Axios snarled beside her. Startled, the poachers fled, abandoning their gun. Milo turned to Elena, panting heavily, and this time, it didn't leave right away. Nikos arrived moments later, staring in dismay. "Is this the bear from your story?" Elena nodded, kneeling beside Milo. "He's protecting the forest, just like we are." From that day on, Milo became the team's invisible guardian. It rarely showed itself, but its tracks were always found near their work sites, as if watching over them. In return, Elena began leaving small offerings of food near the stream, a quiet gesture of gratitude. 3 months later, Elena and Nikos' efforts bore fruit. The trench successfully redirected water, and the Pindus stream slowly came back to life. The first saplings were planted in the ash-covered ground, and signs of life returned. Birds chirped in the treetops, and wild rabbits hopped near the forest's edge. Though old and weary, Milo continued to wander the area, occasionally appearing in the distance to observe. In the village, Janis was forced to admit his mistake when the seasonal rains replenished the farmland. He never apologized, but one day, a basket of fresh fruit quietly appeared at Elena's doorstep, a silent truce. Standing atop a hill, gazing down at the recovering forest, Elena felt a deep sense of fulfillment. Axios lay beside her. She whispered, "We did it, Mother." From somewhere in the distance, a low growl rumbled through the air, a quiet acknowledgement.